She crossed an ocean for someone who once called her his peace in the chaos. Not for money, not to escape, but for something quieter, deeper, a feeling she couldn't quite name. It began with comments, then voice notes, then hours of video calls where words mattered less than presence. And somewhere between night and morning, they built something real. He once wrote to her, "You're the stillness in my noise." That one sentence carried her through weeks of waiting, through visa paperwork, through silent nights curled up beside a packed suitcase. She thought nothing could stop her now. But when the plane touched down in America, the app that had brought them together was already gone. Banned, deleted from every phone, every store. And the airport? It didn't welcome her. Instead, it questioned her. Where are you staying? Why are you here? You came for someone you met on TikTok? TikTok isn't allowed anymore. She looked different. She sounded different. And suddenly that was enough. They didn't see a girl chasing something honest. They saw a problem to manage. What happened next would ripple far beyond one love story. Li Yun was a simple woman from a quiet village in Sichuan, China. She wasn't famous. She didn't chase likes or followers. Her TikToks were soft, almost meditative. Ink brush paintings on rice paper, a steaming cup of tea by the window, her grandmother tending to flowers in the late afternoon sun, and a cat, always curled up on the sill, purring like clockwork. Then one evening, under a video where she painted by lantern light, a comment appeared. "You remind me of a world that doesn't rush. Thank you." The username was @JP Graphics. Jonathan Parker, a graphic designer in Seattle. She almost didn't reply, but there was something about his words. Gentle, sincere, quietly curious. So she wrote back, and he answered again. Their messages started slowly. A few words here and there, then came voice notes, then nightly video calls, and somewhere between time zones and translation apps, they started to laugh together. The kind of laughter that makes distance disappear. They never said the word love, but it was there, in the way he waited online just to see her face, in the way she saved his voice notes like press-in flowers. Fragile, tender, but never forgotten. He sent her photos of Seattle sunsets. She sent him videos of rain tapping on her rooftop. They started talking about meeting in person, maybe in spring, maybe sooner. But then, without warning, TikTok was banned in the United States. One morning she opened the app, and everything was gone. His profile, their chats, their shared videos, the emojis, the quiet moments, all of it vanished. Just like that, the door between them slammed shut. No phone number, no last name, just JP, Seattle, in a memory, now trapped in silence. Her friends called her foolish. Her family told her to move on, but she couldn't, because somewhere deep in her heart, she still believed it was real. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She packed her scarf, her sketchbook, and boarded a flight to America. The flight lasted 12 hours. Outside, the sky was white. Clouds stretched endlessly, one after another. Li Yun sat by the window. She didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't watch anything. She just stared out, as if someone was waiting behind those clouds. She opened her sketchbook, then closed it again. Not because she lacked ideas, but because today, even ink couldn't quiet her mind. A flight attendant stopped beside her row, offering immigration forms. Li Yun accepted it with both hands. The woman's voice was gentle, polite, professional. Would you like the tourist form or the business one? There was nothing rude, nothing sharp, but nothing warm either. A simple question, yet in that moment it felt like being categorized. Li Yun gave a small nod. She didn't have time to answer, and truthfully, she didn't feel like explaining. Across the aisle, a man leaned toward his friend and whispered, probably one of those online marriages. Or coming to do nails. They laughed, quietly, but not quietly enough. She pretended not to hear, but deep inside, the silence screamed. Hours passed. She stood up to stretch her legs and gently brushed the armrest of the man beside her. Watch it, he snapped. What, you think you own the plane? She bowed slightly. Sorry. He didn't respond, just put on his headphones. When she returned, her carry-on had been pushed to the side. A crumpled napkin lay on top of it. She picked it up, slipped it into her coat pocket, and said nothing. A child cried behind her. Someone sighed. A woman muttered, not quite whispering, always happens. Too many people, too much trouble. Li Yun didn't turn around, didn't react. She slowly pulled her scarf from her neck and held it in her hands, as if it could keep her from coming undone. Outside, the sky remained white. Seattle had yet to appear, but the weight in her chest had landed long ago. She placed her hand on her sketchbook, not to open it, just to remember that once she had drawn beautiful things. She closed her eyes and heard his voice again. You're the quiet in my noise. She didn't know what would be waiting when the plane touched down. She only hoped that he still would be. When the plane landed, the familiar click of seatbelts and rustling bags filled the cabin. Passengers stood quickly, reaching for overhead compartments. Li Yun remained seated for a moment longer, not out of hesitation, but habit. In Sichuan, people moved slower, gave space. Here, everything rushed forward. As she stepped into the jet bridge, a cold draft hit her. She pulled her scarf tighter and kept close to the wall, dragging her small suitcase behind. A woman behind her pushed past, muttering to her husband without lowering her voice. Always walking so slow. Let's see how she keeps up out here. They passed her, never looked back. Li Yun didn't say anything. She just walked a little faster, without really knowing why. At the transfer zone, she hesitated at the split, transit or immigration. The signs were all in English. She stepped toward a staff member near the gate. Excuse me, transit or immigration? She asked softly. The woman didn't look annoyed, just distant. It's written right there, ma'am, English only. She nodded. Okay, thank you. But as she followed the direction, a man backing up with his roller bag bumped into her. Watch where you're going, he snapped. Li Yun flinched. Sorry. He looked her up and down, shook his head. Jesus, they're everywhere now. At baggage claim, she accidentally walked toward the wrong carousel. A security guard blew a whistle sharply and waved her off. Hey, that's restricted. Didn't you read the signs? Li Yun raised both hands quickly. Sorry, I didn't know. The guard narrowed his eyes. You need to pay attention, lady. This isn't a sightseeing trip. She nodded, bowing slightly, hands tightening around the handle of her bag. Nearby, a young couple watched her. The woman whispered something. The man smirked. I bet she flew here to marry Rich. Didn't go as planned, huh? Li Yun heard it. She didn't flinch, didn't turn around. She just stood still, not because she was shocked, but because she was tired. Tired of wondering which stairs were normal and which were meant to cut. And then she walked toward immigration, where everything would truly begin. When Li Yun stepped into the immigration hall, the world around her seemed too bright, too white, too sharp. The overhead lights buzzed faintly. The floor gleamed with a polish that made every step echo. She stood quietly in line, shoulders drawn in. Her fingers clutched the soft blue travel folder until the plastic edges bit into her palms. Her Mandarin English phrasebook slipped from her hand and landed with a soft thud. No one helped her pick it up. She bent down, eyes lowered, muttering something in Mandarin she wasn't even sure of. By the time she straightened, the line had moved forward. She had to shuffle run to catch up. Her heart beat faster than her steps. When she finally reached the front, the immigration officer barely looked at her before starting. Purpose of visit? Why Seattle? Who are you meeting? Do you have a return ticket? She opened her mouth, but the words she'd rehearsed so many nights in her bedroom back in Sichuan refused to come. I visit friend, she said slowly. Friend? What friend? Jonathan, from Seattle. Full name? She hesitated. Just Jonathan P. How do you know him? TikTok. He paused. Blink. Then leaned back with an almost amused expression. TikTok? That's banned here. You're saying you flew halfway across the planet to meet a guy from a banned app? She nodded quietly, eyes on the edge of the desk. Do you have his number? Any official invitation? Hotel reservation? Return flight? Her voice was smaller now. No number. He gone. Account gone. I only have this. She slid a folded piece of paper across the desk. A username. @P Graphics. No surname. No address. No proof. He stared at it for a moment, then without a word stamped her paper with a red mark and waved to a nearby officer. Take her to secondary. They escorted her to a smaller room. Gray walls, cold benches, harsh fluorescent lighting. The air felt thinner here. Or maybe it was just her lungs forgetting how to work. Other passengers passed her by, almost all of them white, almost all of them waved through. She watched a French couple laugh softly at a joke. A businessman with an American passport get a smile and a welcome home. A teenage girl get waved through after fumbling her paperwork. But Lee Yun sat, bag beside her, hands in her lap, back straight like she'd been taught. They opened her suitcase. One by one, they unfolded every piece of clothing, held up her pajamas, shook out her scarf, opened the tin of jasmine tea her grandmother packed. What's this? Why so many sketchbooks? Why no gifts for your host? They flipped through her drawings. Bamboo, koi fish, mountains, a cat sleeping on a windowsill. No one said a word, but she felt the weight of every page they turned, like fingers peeling her life apart. Two officers stood near the corner, whispering. No family in the U.S., no clear itinerary. She says she's meeting someone she can't even verify. Could be a trafficking lead or visa fraud. Honestly, probably another one trying to overstay. One woman finally turned to her and asked, dry and curt, have you worked in the U.S. before? Ever applied for a student or work visa? Any relatives here? Anyone you're financially tied to? Lee Yun shook her head slowly. I'm not here to work, she said. I just want to see him. See who? You barely know who he is. The silence in the room grew heavy. The officers didn't look at her, only at their tablets, their checklists, their screens. She wasn't a guest. She was a variable, a file to be closed. For nearly an hour, they left her sitting there. No water, no explanation, no kindness. Her hands began to tremble, so she gripped the hem of her coat, hard, until her knuckles turned white. And then, just as another officer reached for the phone, a voice, clear, certain, from beyond the glass. She's with me. Heads turned, slowly, like the room itself had paused. Jonathan Parker stood just outside the secure zone, hair messy, jacket half-zipped, eyes wide, jaw set, his whole body leaning forward as if trying to close the distance with sheer will. She's a guest of Ripple, he said louder now. She's here for our product launch. The governor's office has our guest list. A pause, then quiet steps, whispered confirmation. Finally, the supervising officer looked up and muttered to the others, let her through. But the damage had already been done. No one apologized, no one smiled, no one welcomed her. She stepped out of the room, but it felt like part of her stayed behind, folded between the pages of a sketchbook now slightly torn at the corner, forgotten on a desk where no one ever really saw her. After the questioning at the airport, Lee Yun didn't complain. She didn't cry. She simply walked out, quiet, steady, like someone who had learned to carry silence with grace. Jonathan picked her up in a rental car. He didn't say much, just glanced at her through the rearview mirror now and then, knowing that no words would be enough. That night, she sat alone by the hotel window. Seattle glittered below like a city made of glass and dreams. But all she could feel was how far away from home she really was. 3 days after the airport, the Ripple launch event began. It was held on the 40th floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle, the kind of place that made your footsteps echo. The kind of place Lee Yun had never imagined herself being in. Tech journalists, investors, developers in hoodies, people with badges and media kits. They filled the hall. Dozens of phones were already pointed toward the stage. The Ripple logo, a soft gradient swirl, pulsed across the LED screen like a calm wave. 5 minutes, Jonathan, a staff member whispered backstage. He nodded, but he wasn't reading his notes. He was looking at the far corner of the room, where Lee Yun stood by the service door, half hidden behind a potted tree. She was wearing the same scarf, holding her sketchbook. Not because she planned to draw, but because it reminded her of who she was. She didn't say a word, just gave him a small nod, as if to say, I'm here. And then his name was announced. Jonathan stepped into the light. Applause. Flashing lights, screens recording. He looked composed, but there was a tightness in his jaw. The first slide behind him showed Ripple's sleek UI. Next to it, a bar graph predicting 3 million users in the first month. He paused. The teleprompter rolled. Let's talk about features. But he didn't read it. He looked at the crowd, then back at the side of the room. At her. I know you came here expecting a product pitch, he began. And I promise we'll get there. But before we talk about features, reach, monetization, I want to talk about something else. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone near the front checked their watch. I want to talk about a woman who reminded me why this platform exists at all. He told them about a tiny village in Sichuan, about soft light through paper windows, ink brushes, steam rising from a ceramic cup, the sound of birds you don't hear in cities anymore. Her name is Li Yun. She wasn't chasing fame. She wasn't trying to go viral. She was just sharing a piece of the world the internet forgot. And I watched from Seattle on my phone, and for a few minutes each night, it made me breathe. Then he told them what happened. TikTok got banned. Her account disappeared. We lost contact. And one morning I thought, that was it. But it wasn't. He walked a few steps across the stage, voice steady now. She crossed an ocean. No number, no last name, just a city, just hope. And when she got here, the system didn't welcome her. It questioned her, treated her like a risk. Someone in the audience frowned. A woman in the third row lowered her phone, suddenly listening harder. She sat for over an hour in a gray room. No water, no answers, no kindness. All because she came here, not with a business card, but with a reason. He stopped. The lights dimmed just slightly. She's here today. He pointed to the back. And slowly, every head in the room turned. Li Yun stood quietly, half-shadowed. Not dressed up, not rehearsed. Just holding her sketchbook like a child holds a favorite book. Jonathan looked at her. She is the reason Ripple exists. She reminded me that connection isn't something you can monetize. It's not a feature. It's a feeling. And when the world tried to erase her, she came anyway. They told her she didn't matter. But look around. He swept a hand over the crowd. Now they know she does. Silence. Then a single clap, another, then the room rose, one by one. Standing. Not for Jonathan, not for the app, but for the quiet woman who refused to disappear. Li Yun didn't bow. She didn't cry. She just smiled, small, honest, and full of something even applause couldn't reach. Weeks later. Weeks passed. Ripple grew fast, faster than anyone expected. Downloads soared. Coverage spread. But what grew faster than the numbers was something quieter and deeper. Voices beyond borders. The initiative Li Yun now led not from a stage, but from a table by the window. With ink on her hands and headphones in her ears, she began reaching out to creators the world had never heard of. A girl in rural Indonesia whispering poetry into a secondhand phone. A boy in Morocco painting murals with food dye and sunlight. A farmer's son in Oaxaca recording the rhythm of raindrops on banana leaves. They weren't polished. They weren't viral. They didn't have perfect lighting or trending sounds, but they were present. And that was everything. Li Yun made sure the world didn't scroll past them. She still paints, still drinks tea from the same chipped ceramic mug, still uploads in the early morning when the sky is soft and gray and the world feels honest. But now when she presses post, millions are waiting, not for spectacle, not for perfection, but for her way of seeing. Jonathan never missed another message. He stopped needing to say, I'm listening, because now she knew. And they didn't talk about what almost didn't happen. They didn't need to. Sometimes in between meetings and schedules, he'd look up from his laptop, find her across the room, and she'd already be looking back, sketchbook on her knees, eyes calm. No rush, no noise, just stillness, shared. And the world, it learned something. Something not in headlines, not in code, not in quarterly reports, but in the quiet way people kept showing up. You can ban an app, you can shut a door, you can change the rules, but you can erase those who refuse to disappear. You can't stop people who believe their voice matters, even if no one's listening yet. You can't silence someone who has already learned to speak, even when the world looks away. And if you scroll far enough on the Ripple feed, beneath the sponsored features and curated collections, you'll still find her first posts. A bamboo brush, a cat curled on a windowsill, steam rising from a porcelain cup, and a girl from a small village the world once overlooked, smiling softly into a camera, not trying to change the world, just reminding it she was here all along.